today's interaction is with a sister duo out there to redefine the future of sustainable energy. Their startup, Nexus Power, manufactures rechargeable, bioorganic, and biodegradable batteries out of agricultural leftovers. They claim that their batteries, created in house, charge faster and last longer than their competitors. The key proposition of the batteries is that they minimize reliance on lithium while also reducing air pollution owing to the use of agricultural leftovers. In this episode, we speak with one of the sisters, Nikita Baliarsingh, to understand more about how they stumbled upon the idea, the role of serendipity, the fundraising, expansion plans, and finally, the biases they had to face for being women entrepreneurs.
I would say there was no eureka moment to coming down to what we decided to do. Ever since kids, we were very fond of entrepreneurship as a genre, and we were very sure that we wanted to have our own company. So that was, I think, we were about 10 or 11 years old, and we had this thing in mind that you have to build your own company, you have to build your own brand, and so on and so forth. So since then, we've kind of gained experience and exposure on those lines, trying to understand how companies work and what entrepreneurship is like, what startups are, which is a term that came very late to India. Honestly, it came around 2015, 16, and before that, we were not really aware of these multiple genres. But thankfully, yes, my parents have been into business all their life, and we've seen a very business environment atmosphere at home. So it wasn't very difficult to, it was not like a switching gear thing for us. We were in that environment from the very beginning, and our school was really into it. So we got a lot of entrepreneurial exposure in the school because we used to have these business modeling competitions and stuff like that in school. So it kind of helped us to understand the entire space. But once we stepped into college, we were doing business management for our undergrad, and we had a paper on sustainability which talked about the environment, the concerns, and the carbon footprint and carbon credit, and how people are talking about working for the environment and how different technologies and a lot of big companies are coming together to work for the planet. So that is something that caught our attention, both of us. And again, at that time, people were talking about concept electric vehicles. It was about 2016, 2017, I guess, when we were in our college. And electric vehicles were being displayed in auto expos, but they were concept cars. It hadn't come on the road, or it was not being sold to the customers, for the matter of fact. So that was probably something that really excited us because we were hearing about electric cars for a long time. And then we kind of saw the concept cars, but we had this thing in us that it is still not being sold in the market. So we wanted to actually make four-wheeler electric vehicles. And we wanted to be in the passenger vehicle segment for electric vehicles and wanted to sell Indian-made, indigenously developed four-wheeler vehicles. But when we started working on that project and we started doing our research and kind of building our concept and idea, we realized that people are actually not open to electric vehicles as much as they are for the ICE engine cars. The very reason is that they don't trust the battery component of the vehicle and how long will it actually power the vehicle. Will it not blow up and things like that. And also that the infrastructure was limited, so we don't have charging stations the way we have a diesel or a fuel station in the country. So people were not very open to accepting electric vehicles. And then we dug in deeper and we realized that there are more problems that the battery has beyond the range and charging time and duration and stuff. So first and major problem that we thought was that lithium was actually imported. It's not found in India. We are very heavily dependent on import. So that causes a problem of price because it gets expensive to import, and then when you fit it in the vehicles also become expensive. So Indian market middle class is not yet open to buying very expensive cars, right? So they want good premium luxury but at reasonable prices. So lithium batteries made it very expensive. That was the first problem. Second, that from the environmental point of view, lithium is very hazardous. It if left open in the air, it burns out immediately. It has a lot of fumes, and it's not a very safe metal for both the planet and the people. It's dangerous. So, looking at these aspects, we were like, why not think of something which is more abundantly available in our country, which where we reduce the dependency on imports, and secondly, which is not as harmful for the environment and the people, something which might not be as dangerous. because again, you don't have a way of disposing these batteries also. So you need a way to clear out all of this waste. So we were looking at something which could manage that waste problem, not as harmful, not wouldn't give out so many fumes and harmful gases, and then would not also be an import heavy product. So we came across multiple things. We tried to, again, we did most of our search online. We used to read a lot of research papers, and that is where we stumbled upon this idea of building batteries from proteins. Proteins is something which is naturally available in a lot of living organisms, in plants, in animals, and proteins are basically the energy transfer cells in living organisms. Right? They store the energy and they transfer it, the mitochondrial cells, basically. So we stumbled upon that idea, and that was actually fascinating because nobody was talking about it, but there was plenty of research. And we found this in an old book from our grandfather's library. So he's a biochemist, and he handed over a book to us from 1960s, which said
Oh,
that proteins could have a potentially beneficial in electrolytes. So when that happened, and people were still not working on it, there was research based on peptides from 1950s, 1960s, but it was not commercially built or worked upon. So that is where I think we just picked up this thing that let's try and figure out how we can work on it, how we can build it. And that's when we started our first experiments. And by the time we had reached this juncture in life, it was already COVID. Things were all shut down around the world. No labs, no movement, nothing. And by this time, we had not registered the company yet. We were just doing some background research. We started off in late 2019 actually. And by the time we reached the idea that we wanted to work on, we already were under the lockdown. So the only option we had was to experiment things at home and try and figure out, if it really works. And in parallel space, the air quality index of Delhi was being reported.
hmm.
November, December 2019, it was really bad, and that was all because the crops were being burned, and people didn't have a way of again disposing them. So it was a very random vague thought that we had that because we are using plant proteins and it's natural, it's biodegradable. Why don't we just try and figure out if we can do it from this crop residue instead of chemically synthesizing it in the labs? Why don't we just extract it from naturally available crops? And that's when we picked up few of these crops. We tried the experiments. It worked for us accidentally again, and that is how the entire circle of Nexus got complete. Now we make batteries out of crop residue. So that was the journey, and then once we'd hit that space, I think then there was no looking back.
So I think what I'm understanding that you are really a product of serendipity. A lot of serendipity has happened in your life, right? I mean, you got your grandfather's book, not necessarily like a recent research paper that you stumbled upon. That book from the 1960s sort of really became the thesis for your research, so to speak. And then because the COVID happened, you had to make the entire situation work. So you basically sort of moved from proteins to say that why don't we use crop residue, right? So often in life, and I think the more I speak to entrepreneurs, I think the power of serendipity cannot be undermined. And I think once you have
I
made up your
completely
mind to do something, it really the forces sort of come together to sort of make this happen, look like.
I am a strong believer of this concept. I am a very strong believer because a lot of things that happened for us were actually because things just came together much more than what we were trying to do ourselves. In fact, the first batteries that we made, the proof of concept that we call, was actually made with kidney beans and chickpeas because they're a rich source of protein, and that was readily available at home. So we did a very school level science project with kidney beans and chickpeas and sodium hydroxide surf, making the initial proof of concept. So that was how basic things started from. And because it worked, it had, and something like that raw. Chole and rajma is my staple food at home. We eat that almost every day. And from that we made a 2.5 volt battery cell. So I mean that probably was just divine intervention which said, this is where you have to go. Otherwise, had that project failed initially, we probably would have never moved ahead with this idea. We would have switched to something else. But that worked,
But tell me,
and then
Nikita,
we had.
but is there somebody else also sort of who's doing this, like building batteries from crop residue, right?
We've not come across anybody directly into what we are doing. So we were using
Okay.
proteins, and we had removed lithium completely. But there is a company, I think, somewhere in Israel who was working on adding proteins to the lithium-ion batteries to enhance their performance. So that was
Hmm.
one paper that we found, and I think that also gave us confidence to kind of start working towards eradicating lithium completely and building the batteries out of protein. But as far as crop residue is concerned, see, when we started, it was nobody, and we kind of took 2 years to put that thing in the media, in minds of people, that it is out of crop waste. Now, of late, I have heard people writing this, that we are making out of grass, we are making out of plants. So all of those things have come up eventually. I've read a few papers now, but I'm sure they are working on carbon. Because if you char any material, you land into carbon. So that's what is mainly happening. I haven't still come across anybody who's directly or completely working with proteins or peptides, for that matter of fact.
Okay, but tell me one thing, this switch to crop residue, right? I mean, this was, you said divine intervention told you sort of this is the way going forward, but there must have been some research or some nudge for you stumbled upon, or was it sort of some bit of expert advice that you sought? I mean, this switch that happened, how did that happen? Yeah.
See, as I said, we read a lot. We used to read a lot of research papers, articles, science and technology journals through the internet, and then books. So there were a lot of research papers on similar lines, which we kind of accumulated together to build something fresh out of it. So we read a paper on on some cathode, another one on some protein-based anode, but each of those elements still had lithium somewhere in it, either lithium or it was like a lead acid kind of a structure. So what we did was we kind of picked up these multiple different papers, and we say picked up the positive electrode from one side, the negative from the other, and then the electrolyte composition happened purely out of a basic science knowledge of a salt water conductor. And then that proof of concept was built. So it was not that we found papers directly in that journal, but it wasn't difficult to collate it together and try and see if a different experiment can be worked on. Of course, that is not the final product, the initial experiment that we did. A lot of research went into it. There's a team of 30 people right now who's working on this every day in the R&D labs. But the fact that that had the potential to give us a potential difference of 2.5 volts, I think that was a stepping stone enough for us to go ahead and keep doing deeper research.
Okay, so tell me one thing about the product market fitment, right? A lot of sort of young entrepreneurs or startups sort of really go through various iterations of the product till you establish the product market fitment. What was that one milestone, or you could say that one order, or that one piece of validation that you received and said that okay, now we are set, now we are getting into our own, and now we can sort of firmly establish that perhaps a product market fitment has happened.
See, as I said, there is no particular eureka moment. It's not like a one space where you conclude things or you come down to a particular thing. It's the entire journey on the whole. There are multiple things, as far as product fit is concerned. But what we do specifically is we try to stick to the existing sizes, the existing available space of the battery pack in the vehicle, the existing charging infrastructure, and that is what was our standardization level. So our journey was to reach our levels in the product to a level which fits the existing infrastructure, existing environment, so that when you have to sell your product in the market, nobody has to build something fresh to start using my product. So that was the benchmark. And when we started arriving at those numbers, I think that was enough for us to believe that we are ready to go ahead and do our pilots. And then eventually we are yet to go commercial, because we are looking to do a lot of tests, get proper data of the batteries. About 6-7 months, I think we look to go commercial. But if I have to talk about a product market fit, I think my benchmark was reaching the existing numbers, reaching a level where you don't have to do anything extra to fit my batteries into your vehicles. And specifically because we are a B2B company, we work with the OEMs. It's very important we understand that they have a fixed space for their batteries in their vehicles. The design it's very, very restricted, and there's not much of scope to fiddle with that and convince them to rebuild their models and redesign their vehicles. So for us to just fit into that space was product market fit enough.
Okay, so what is the kind of initial reaction that you're getting from OEMs? Because as you mentioned that you're not commercial yet, right? So what is the kind of conversation like with them?
See, everybody's very excited when they get to hear about it. So we have never faced a problem in trying to break through or trying to break the ice with OEMs or say grid storage is another space where we are working on, or drones for the matter of fact. It's very exciting to listen to batteries from crop recipe. So people always give us a year, at least for a minute or two. That's not been a concern. But to convince them to shed money for that, to put it into their vehicles, because the trust factor is, it's not easy to gain that in the very beginning. But we've been grateful, I would say. We had in Odisha itself, we have a few electric vehicle OEMs, and they have been kind enough to try and go ahead and test these batteries in their vehicles, for the very reason that we are all from the same land and from Odisha, and we're trying to build in the electric vehicle space. So people have been very generous to accept it and go ahead and test it without having much concerns. Of course, yes, when you go ahead for pilots, you don't get paid for it because you're testing your batteries and that's for your benefit. So that's the space. We are in cash burn, but we are looking to have the same people as our clients. So I'm sure we're going to make some money out of it eventually. But from once you get your first pilots, the first clients to test your batteries, from there moving to the bigger names, to more nationalized or international brands, it's not a very difficult journey, because then you have a record of, I have worked with say 3-4 companies in my hometown, and they have these test records, and on the basis of this, now I want to try my batteries with say with the Olas and the Ethers and stuff like that. So it's we've been grateful that people have been generous enough to accept testing fresher compositions in batteries. And from there on, we found it easier to reach out to more nationalized brands.
But Nikita, what is this testing telling you? What does the report card look like? So while they're positives, there also some homework to be done, right? There also sort of some critical feedback,
Absolutely.
and you are escalating that back into the product. That is the smarts of a good entrepreneur, that you get market feedback and you escalate that back into the product, right? And you also a complete R&D based sort of tech solution that you're offering. So, what really have been some concerns, or basically on 2 or 3 areas that were voiced out to you, and you went back to your lab and started working on that?
So on the positives, it's very similar to the count of outcomes we wanted, because it's very close to the lithium-ion battery results that we get, voltage-wise, ampere rating-wise, energy density. Charging time is faster, so it takes hardly 35 minutes to charge the battery back. So these are good, pretty good for us. Going in the long run, it gets cheaper, it charges faster, so it solves a lot of problems. Coming to the negatives, I think the very first thing that we heard was the life cycle of the battery, because the initial tests that we did on the battery cyclers, not in the vehicles, that gave us somewhere around 1200 to 1500 battery cycles, charge cycles, which is probably, I think, 20% lesser than what it is for the lithium-ion batteries. So if a lithium-ion battery would give you, say, 1600 to 1800 cycles, we would only be able to give you 1200 to 1500 cycles. So that was probably one major concern that people had, because durability is a major concern and we have to work on it. We are still working on this to push the cycles to a higher number, at least come at par with LFP or NMC. LFP we are already at par with. NMC is something that we have to reach in terms of the battery performance, durability. Second, the concern also is that proteins are natural elements, right? So they actually tend to dissolve in the electrolyte, because electrolyte is mostly an ionic salt and it tends to dissolve the protein over time. And that is the reason why the durability issue was actually happening. So we had to shift from a liquid electrolyte to a slightly gel based, towards the more solid side, because the lesser the viscosity of the liquid, the more it would tend to dissolve proteins inside it in terms of electrolyte. So that was one concern that happened when we started our initial tests, because initially we were doing half cell testing in the labs. When we made the full cells and then we put them into the vehicles, we realized that this problem is going to come haunting on us eventually. Even if we kind of put it in the market. So right now we've moved to a more gel-based electrolyte. Maybe it might be required in the future that we have to look at more solid options. But for now, I think we'll start with the gel-based options only, because solid state electrolytes is a research for, it's for another 10 years, I think. People have been trying for the last 30 years. So for us to step into that genre would also take some time, and we don't want to be pre-revenue for so long. So we'll have to start with the initial models and then update our versions of batteries. Other than
Okay.
that, I think so far we've not really faced major concerns in the battery front. It's probably been pretty accepted by people who tried it.
So basically, durability and changing the solvent, right? Moving to sort of more gel-based electrolyte is sort of what you're looking at. So you are plugging those gaps right now in basically the kind of products that you have made. So how much time will it take for you to sort of get to the market till the time that if you get really your first client, so you speak, but that will be the major validation, right?
See, my idea of being in the market is, every product has different versions. We
Mm-hmm.
can keep updating those versions. So the first one that we have is good enough to go in the market. And the trials and tests have already begun with OEMs as pilots. So once the reports from the pilots come to us, we can actually start commercially selling these batteries. But as far as the research update is concerned, that would go on because R&D is something that never comes to an end. You can keep doing your research all your life, but that doesn't allow you to hold your product that long. The product also has to go in the market. So we'll launch the first version that we have. We'll eventually update it maybe another year or so, and then the updated versions will come. But the fact is that it is still as environment friendly, as safe as any other version would be, because we would make sure that we don't launch anything half done. We would make the product as per our promises and then put it in the market. And we've already reached that level. So there is no concern with the product not being good enough for the market. Version 1 is also good enough, but the improvements have to go on, otherwise you have to give fresh models to people, otherwise you die out. So that's what the plan would be. First version would go out maybe 7 months, 7 8 months into commercial selling. We're already doing trials internally, but commercial selling would take about 8 months, and then we keep updating. Maybe another 6 7 months later, another product would come in. Year or 2 or 3 years later, a new version would come in. So that would go on. If I have to tell my R&D team that you have to make the best product, they would say spend 10 years on that, and we can't afford that.
So
So
basically, your
we have to
first
step in the
version is
market.
no. So your
Yeah.
first version is market ready. You're saying in next 6 months.
Yes.
In next six
Six,
months.
7 8 months. It depends on the environmental factors also, because now here we have to set up an entire manufacturing unit. How much time would that take, and so on and so forth. Those things will matter. But yeah, 7 8 months we should be good enough to place it in the market and get some revenues in the company.
Set up a manufacturing unit for that. You are looking at Orissa only, right, as a location.
Debatable, because we would want to be in Odisha, no doubt. In Bhubaneswar, because we born and brought up here, we belong to this place. It's enormous support, but we are also open to whoever is open to give us a good deal in terms of setting up of manufacturing plants, because land and government factors count a lot. Incentives matter, so we are open to discussions. But somewhere deep down, I think I'll want to be here. Of course, these are decisions that we don't take individually as founders. Once you have investors on board, the board of directors is equally influential in these decisions. So that I think time will tell. But if you have to ask me, my heart would say stay in Bhubaneswar, but I can't really be sure of that.
Okay. So are you sort of how are you funding the expenses right now? How big is the company? And are you bootstrapped or have you raised some funding?
We were bootstrapped initially, but then we got Government of India grants during the early phases, 2020, 2021. COVID time, we got a lot of Government of India grants from uh, the Ministry of Electronics and IT, from Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology. So a lot of people came in to give us some, I think 1.5 crores worth of grant on. And then early 2022, we raised our first round of equity investments. And since then, we've kind of progressed, and now we are raising our second. We almost closed on the paperwork and stuff. So yeah,
And
nearing
how
closure.
and how big is the second round of funding?
I mean, big or small is a relative term, I would say. I wouldn't let out numbers right now, but I'll wait for the PR to come out for that. But it's bigger than the first round for sure.
And the
And as
first
far as
round,
the team size is concerned, we're about 30 35 people right now.
so how big was your first round and who were like what has been the value addition of the investors really for a firm like yours?
So the first round, we had Jito Angel Network coming in as the lead investors, and Pontac VC was the co-investor along with the STBI Technology Fund. We raised about 3.3 crores in the first round. And as far as value addition is concerned, so both Jito and Pontac have multiple more startups on their uh, portfolio, and many of them are actually electric vehicle or e-mobility industry based. So the first thing that we got is immediate connects to a lot of nationalized startups in the e-mobility space, whether it is vehicle manufacturing, it is motors, or it is BMS or components and chipsets. So we had an access to a lot of database. Second, they're renowned people. Each of them has their own. I think I would say social circle where most of these big OEM guys fit in. So somebody's in touch with the Hero Group, somebody's in touch with the. In fact, they've invested in Ola and Acer and so on and so forth. So they know the founders closely. So the network has been great for us ever since we got them on the cap table. In fact, of course, it works both ways. We provide something to their portfolio companies. They provide us with something. So it's like a mutual exchange of things that we have. But investors on board add in multiple ways more than just the finances and the networking. They also guide you through a lot of spaces. So there have been times when we just randomly called up our investor director and asked him that, sir, we are kind of in a block here and we need you to help us. They've pushed us forward. In fact, so we are a very young startup, and we don't have enormous funds to make our own labs and make our own manufacturing units. We didn't have it initially, so we used to come in tie-ups with government-based CSIR labs and government-based institutes, private institutes, incubators. So many of these CSIR labs we got through the directors or the basic professors through the investors that we had on board, because we had an angel network on board, and angel network had multiple angels from multiple cities in India. So somewhere or the other they had connections in that city, and that really came in handy. So these things really work when you have investors on board. And of course there is also a con side to it, which is you really have to be very careful with all your discussions, your numbers, what you're committing when you have investors, because as they say, the shark keeps biting your fin. So that has to be carefully handled.
Yeah. To tell you one thing, Nikita, for you, I don't think only financial investors can be worth your while. You have to really look at investors who bring their strategic intent and who can really add value, because you are at that sort of very sweet sort of value proposition, because you want to commercialize yourself. You would want to have VCs who have partnerships with, say, the Olas and the Ethers of the world, right? Who can also take you international. So I don't think you're only looking at financial sponsors. You basically want strategics also, right?
See, strategic would be an easy option to go for. Strategic investors, in terms of somebody who already has something like an Excite batteries or an Amaron batteries, they would probably be the best pick, because they have the available infrastructure. You just have to go set your technology and you are good to roll. But what we believe, both Nishita and I, is when you are working on a company, I think it's just in our mind that we have to build that brand company ourselves. So we look to set up the entire thing from the base as far as we can go. Of course, we'll be open to licensing the technology eventually, but we'll want to have our own plants, our own manufacturing lines, and all our own setups. So VCs, we had one in the first round also. He came in as a co-investor, the Contact VC, and now for the second, yes, we have a lot of VCs lined up again. But as far as strategic investors are concerned, I think we might look at it, but sometimes in the next rounds, maybe Series A or Series B, is when that kind of a tie-up would come in. At this point, it's very early for us to give in to a strategic investor, for the matter of it.
Okay. Nikita, tell me how much is your burn rate like right now? And the next funding round will essentially be entailed for, I'm understanding, setting up a manufacturing unit. That will be the major cost, right? So from 35, you'll perhaps go to 100 people.
I think that would happen in this round itself. Not like a proper manufacturing unit, but a pilot line would be set up. That's the plan. That's there in the charts for sure. Series A would essentially be, yes, a commercial line, depending on the kind of support we get from the OEMs we already tied up with. And as far as team size is concerned, I'm not sure if we would touch 100 now itself, but somewhere close to that for sure, because the pilot line would need a lot of manpower. So yeah, we should touch somewhere close to 100 already. And Series A, I think, is going to be obviously greater than that. But that is another 9-10 months away. So I'm not really focusing on that part right now. This round, and then how we grow from here, what numbers we show post this round is what is more important for us at the moment. Eventually, I think once we have our test results and initial OEM tie-ups, initial revenues flowing in, I think then we'll kind of start thinking about the Series A and beyond.
Okay. But sort of tell me one thing, that what is giving you confidence, like as you are on this journey, right? What keeps you sort of going and tells you? Because before you, I was also speaking to the Log9 Batteries founder, right? And he was regaling me his journey, and they are also sort of, they have very particular asks from the government, right, on the taxation, on the regulatory side also. And it's amazing what sort of they have also done, right? And they are very, very focused on the passenger, sort of commercial passenger vehicle segment. And they already have strategic like Amar Raja batteries on board. So there's a lot to learn from sort of a journey like that also. And then here you are, very, very focused that Shrija strategics would come in later, but I would want to own manufacturing unit. I would really want to sort of take this commercial. So whilst there's conviction, there also self-doubt on where you're going, or how is it?
Uh, I don't think there is self-doubt. There are always certain spaces where you can never be sure of what exactly you want and what exactly happens eventually. And I would completely agree. There is so much to learn from Log9 because they're way ahead in terms of company growth and product growth cycle. We are still on the stepping stones, and they've kind of marched ahead. So yes, there's a lot to learn from them, and we do also take in a lot of I would say inspiration from what we see them doing and how we see them growing, because that's the only other company you can actually look up to in terms of battery technology. So yes, we do take a lot of inspiration from them, but I'll tell you, it's not that we are very sure of what we want to do in terms of having our own manufacturing line or a strategic investor or things like that, because as I said, these are decisions that don't lie completely in our hands as founders. My investors, the board directors are very influential, and they are going to be an essential part when we kind of take these calls. And we share Jito in common with Log9. So we get a lot of time and a lot of insights from, their background, for the matter of fact. So we do understand that certain things, you might want one thing that might end up in a different way. So it's not that we are very sure of what's happening. There is a little confusion, but there is no self doubt, to be very honest, because we know where we are heading to. We know how we are getting there, but certain management decisions happen every day, and these are, I think, parts of that. So that's how it goes. As far as our growth is concerned, and where we are looking to be, for the time being, we are very sure we want to look at two-wheeler and three-wheeler electric vehicles, because that's an existing market. We would have readily available vehicles to fit our batteries into. And apart from that, we are focusing on grid storage applications, because that's like a stationary space, and that is an upcoming market where not too many players have tried to tap yet. So there are two spaces that we are very focused on for the time being. I think for the next maybe 1 year or so, we would like to be in that space before we start thinking of commercial vehicles, buses and trucks, or passenger four-wheeler cars. That would be like maybe a 7 months, 8 months down the line project. But for now, it would be two-wheeler and three-wheelers, electric vehicles specifically, and grid storage applications. Slightly drones, but not very focused though.
Understood. So give me some kind of revenue breakup that you have in mind, or you think you'll be able to make money this year, so 6 months down the line when you go to the market, or will it still be a cash burn game?
See, we are absolutely targeting to have revenues by the time we close the FY 24-25 financial year, which should be March 2025, and we are working towards that. But I think initial 4-5 months, 6 months from April, or I mean, even from today, if I have to count, we would still be in a cash burn for some time. But I think later half would be where we would get our revenues flowing in, and we have targeted certain amount of revenues. I'm sure we'll try and hit them, or even if there would be a deviation, it wouldn't be much.
Okay. And what does the number look like?
It's kind of a very basic initial assumption that we would make somewhere close to 18 or 20 crores in revenues in the first year of trials, and OEM tie-ups would pretty much suit us well. Maybe 10 to 15, 15 to 18, something like that would suit us well. Considering the kind of pilot size plant we have, we don't have a capacity beyond that. So yeah, that should be an ideal number from my point of view. Depends how much, and I'm sure we'll kind of achieve that number. So yeah, that should be good.
Oh, that's a decent number for the first year of taking something commercial. Give me a sense of margins in this business. How are the margins? How do the margins look like?
For our initial cost assumptions that we have, we keep a 50 to 55% margin over all the expenses that we have in the selling price of our battery. And that is also because we've done some extensive R&D in the last 4 years. We want to get a little premium, and then kind of reduce the prices. But even after a 55% margin, we are still cheaper than the lithium-ion options that we have in the market. So I think it's a comfortable price to be in. If need be, we can shrink our margins to say a 40-45%, and we would still be making some profits eventually. So we have that bandwidth to play around with the price.
That's a very, very beautiful margin to play with, 55% margin in the manufacturing OEM segment. And if you can sort of really sort of manage to sort of get that, even if you get onto 40, I think it's a great business model if you establish that, right? Because if you from 20 crores in the first year, you will only get to like say 40, right? And then like very soon you'll become 100 crore company in 3 years.
Yeah, that's what the plan is, maybe. Or maybe quicker than that, hopefully. Let's see.
Okay. Nikita, we have been talking, and I sort of really get a sense of conviction and an assumption from you that life is linear. Everything will go in the right direction, right? I think all of us want to work with that. But there would be situations in your life when it has happened, especially with women founders, even globally and domestically, right? Where there are temptations to sort of say that, okay, we retain the creative part, but perhaps give us the more management part could be outsourced. So you bring in an outside CEO or an outside external investor point in person. If you are somebody who is so clear headed, you think you should be able to put your foot down and say no. I mean, it is our organization and this is not happening. So have you also thought of scenarios where things do not necessarily go in the direction where you envisage?
I mean, we've dealt with them. Not that I have to think about it. Of course, it has been a part of our journey so far. We've been in so many spaces where being so young and being women has been a question mark in the minds of a lot of people. But I think the very reason that we've kind of spent now 3.5, 4 years in the company and we have had investors on board, I think that is proof enough to, at least pat our own backs that we've been able to be firm on our decisions. We've kind of not given up or kind of not let it go wherever and whenever required. We've obviously had our choices. Uh, we've kind of kept our heads held high with what we wanted to do. One interesting thing would be that people actually wanted us to move out of Bhubaneswar because they said it's a little eased out, kind of a relaxed city, and you won't be able to build what you want to from this particular place. So they wanted to change the location, but we are still here because we believe location does not make much of a difference. And the reason why I say this is, being in Bhubaneswar, when we started off here, and being in this place in Bhubaneswar, if we could, if Forbes could scout us out, if we could get into Entrepreneur India or the international. So we've had calls with even Mercedes, even Volvo Group. So if they could scout us out, even though we were in Bhubaneswar, I don't think location really makes a difference. And since we have managed to be in the industry and in the media equally, having our presence in both those major domains of business, I don't think location really makes much of a difference. It's all the work that we do and how much effort we put in. So the fact that we've managed to kind of put our foot down and stay here where we are and grow from here. Yes, surely we've had experiences of taking the tough call, and I believe we've made the right decisions in life.
Nikita, I'm so glad that you pointed out that there is stigma and there is judgment because you're a woman and you're very young, right? So there's a lot of judgment going in around, and perhaps you'll face more of it. And that is where you have to be convicted, right? I mean, you have to stand with that conviction that, listen, I mean, this is not happening. And I'm glad that you are open to having uncomfortable conversations with your board very early on in the journey.
Absolutely.
Right? So, what is it that you're telling your mind? How do you prepare yourself to have that uncomfortable conversation? Because you'll have many more going forward, right? And does that even deter you for once? Because having this imposter syndrome is very, very prominent, especially for female entrepreneurs. I mean, there's so much self doubt that we ourselves have upon us, right? So, what is it that you are telling yourself on a daily basis, preparing yourself to be strong and resilient?
See, honestly, I'd say Nishita actually interacts with the investors and she takes care of the finances more than I do. So when I am interacting with the investors, it's more about the product and it's more about the entire media marketing point of view. So it's not very difficult. It's not a difficult job from my cup of tea. But from my point of view, it's okay. It's not as difficult or as tarnishing as it would be for Nishita. But there are certain things that people don't agree on, which as management, as we really believe it would make a positive impact to us. Sometimes we come down to common conclusions. Sometimes we have to let go the fact that maybe it is not the right choice from the choice that I have made. Sometimes we are very headstrong that I want to do it this way and I am going to do it this way. You wait and watch the results. So there are multiple scenarios. There is, as such, I mean, nothing specific that I keep telling myself when I am into these meetings or when I'm into these discussions. Surely, before you step into the meeting, you have certain things in your mind that I'm going to put things this way or place it in a certain order in front of the board. But there's nothing there's no particular statement that kind of gives me energy that I keep telling myself. It's with the flow. It's with the kind of discussions we have. It's with where I believe it's going my way. Somewhere I believe that maybe I should take into consideration what the investors are saying or what the board is saying, because naturally they are more experienced. They are older to me by many years. So I do completely respect the fact that you have more experience in certain areas. But as far as finances are concerned, most of the problems happen when you have to negotiate on financial terms, because as founders we want to spend somewhere. The board might not be very okay with it. uh, just like we wanted to raise, actually the round that we are raising now, we wanted to start raising this uh, probably 7 months back, but the board was not okay with it, and they pushed it for another 3 4 months, 5 months later. So sometimes you have to accept it, and you also have to understand their point of view that fine, maybe we are rushing in too early, and maybe if your growth is stable, even if it's a little slow, if it is stable, that is a better space to be in than jumping your valuation and then dropping down 90%. Something that we've seen with a lot of unicorns in India already. During certain phases, they've kind of pushed up their valuation to some billions of dollars and then fallen 90% down to some millions. That is a worse space to be in than being in a very slow and steady growth space. So it's all about maybe conversations, discussions, and at the end of the day, if you can arrive at common discussions, probably that is all that really makes a difference. As far as for me being a woman is concerned, I remember a space when we had just started pitching to investors. One of the very early investors we were pitching to, that was back in 2021, I think, or 2020, just before the Forbes thing happened. And one of them, so we pitched the entire idea to them. We had a detailed discussion, and then suddenly the first question he asks is, "When do you plan to get married?" And I'm like, how is that concerned? I mean, it's got nothing to do with what I'm doing, but that is a question that comes up. And then he's like, "So will your husbands also join the company once you guys are married? Or what happens to the continuity of the company if you're married? And who's there to take care of the business?" So these are things that come to women that do not come to men at all. At least I haven't heard of a single man saying, "I was asked if my wife will join the company or not." So that is one point where we thought, this probably it's not the right thing to happen. And for that point, I think we had blacklisted our investor that he is not coming on the cap table for sure, because I can't handle somebody who's so bothered about when I'm getting married. So there are certain calls that you do take, and today it is hilarious for us. At that point of time, I was furious when I heard that question, and trying my best to not show it on the face when we were pitching, because it was online. We were still on the video conference at that time, in late 2020, and to try your best to be very stable and not show that anger on the face, and still delicately answer the questions. Yeah, it was tough initially, but now I think we've learned it. If something like this come our way, we just smile and put it away because it doesn't bother us anymore.
Thanks for that, Nikita. I'm so glad that you have been so candid in this entire conversation that how women, and in fact, not only you, women in leadership positions are always, everybody has some story where they're judged because of their gender and not because of their capability. My last question to you, an entrepreneurial journey for about 3.5 to 4 years, what really have been two key learnings uh,
Just
that you
two.
could say?
I think I can write a book.
And
I said just two key learnings. I think I can write a book about what I've learned in my journey so far.
like the
But
two ones which sort of really stand out for you, and what really sort of keeps you awake, that what really sort of keeps you on your toes, that one thought perhaps in back of your mind.
okay, the two things that I've learned specifically in my entrepreneurial journey. First, and something which is very close to my heart, is the fact that entrepreneurship, or being an entrepreneur, it's not just about having a very kick-ass idea or having enough money or the right amount of finances or having a great team. It's so much more about the emotional stability that the founders have, because there are plenty of highs and lows. But as a founder, the emotional graph has to be a linear graph. We cannot get very excited on the highs and very depressed on the lows, because an entire team is residing on how we react to a particular situation. And to manage that with all the cool and comfort in your mind, and then that's probably the toughest task to do. But that is how important it is for a company to progress. So the founders specifically has have to be very, very emotionally stable and have a very linear emotional graph throughout the journey of them being founders of the company for as long as they are a part of it. Because the company, it's a going concern. It's me today, it'll be somebody else a few years later. But as long as I am attached and as long as the team is dependent on me, my reactions to situations, my emotional stability have to be very linear, and I have to be very, very strong as a person. That's the first thing that I have learned in my journey so far. Second, we're very curious as children, but the older we grow, the more mature I would say we become. So we tend to not experiment things that come into our mind. But what I really believe is it's important to stay curious, to go ahead and experiment, to try that thing. So what if it doesn't happen? At least step out and try and do it, try and see. And because that helps you learn new things, that helps you understand yourself better. And more than anything else, it just maybe sometimes helps you discover fresher ideas. Like we discovered our batteries out of chickpeas and kidney beans. Had we not actually gone ahead to do it, maybe we wouldn't have been where we are today. So there are certain things that happen in your journey that tell you that it's important to just go ahead and try. So there's this quote that both Nishita and I really believe in, which says a ship in the harbor is safe, but that is not what it is built for. You have to step out and you have to challenge yourself. These are two things that probably I've learned. I've learned the most so far. Apart from that, there are plenty of more things. As I said, I can write a book of things that I've learned as a founder, as a founder sibling to an older twin throughout the journey, as women in the journey. Plenty of things, but these are two things that have kind of stayed in me, and these are two things that I try hard to work on.
Thanks for that. I think we had a very lovely conversation. So it's fun to work with your sister, right? So do the fights happen, or there's so much more sisterhood, and do the parents have to intervene then finally?
So I tell you, I am that twin who copied her sister's assignment all through her life in school. So I don't think it was any difficult for me to just step in with her in the company and fit into the same role again. She is the CEO, so I take inspiration from her as well. Having said that, we do fight. Yes, we fight more. I mean, of course, it's not like a cat and dog fight in the professional space. But as I said, we have to hold our nerves. And when we are in the office with the entire team, then it's more professional, it's more mature. So you can't end up being the sisters that you are at home. But yeah, we do end up. We have a lot of disagreements. I would kind of place it that way than saying fights. So we discuss a lot, we talk a lot, and in fact, Nexus happened out of a late night terrace conversation. So we were discussing at the terrace, and then the entire thing rolled on, so on and so forth. So we talk a lot, and I think a lot of our discussions give us a lot of solutions to random problems. So being with the sister, it's like a cushion around me in life. I don't have to ever kind of step out to that world, that people say कि अभी आपने दुनिया देखी नहीं. मुझे जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ती. I have that cushion around every time I have somebody to go and discuss with. I have Nishita to ask and then talk, and whatever we understand with the level of maturity we have, we work it out that way. As far as parents are concerned, we don't discuss with them professional work as much. So they give us their guidance in terms of how important your financial accounts are, how important you have to be when you keep your paperwork. But we don't go down to talk to them about this happened in the company and that happened and she said this. That doesn't happen. We keep it to ourselves. In fact, at times when we are like sitting in our room and talking and mom comes in or dad comes in, we just change the topic completely.
The topic.
Because we don't kind of tend to discuss a lot of business upfront with them. We keep work
It's fun.
at the office
It's
place.
fun to build a company with a sister and be with your parents and be in your hometown. It's a lot of fun. I think it's like leading a very good life.
I think
Yeah.
it gives us the bandwidth to take more risks because a lot of our basic needs are already taken care of because our parents are there with us and we are staying with them. And as far as working with sister is concerned, it's been real fun for me. I don't really know about her because she has to do a lot of more effort and a lot of more work than what I do, I believe. So it's, yeah, surely fun for me. I mean, I'm sure she's enjoying that as well, but that's how life is.
Thank you so much, Nikita. I think we had such a meaningful and interesting conversation. And till the time I see you next, goodbye and good luck.